So when you have a plush toy, we need to get into the toy, and obviously there's not going to be any screws or anything that we can remove. So what we have to do is cut a seam open, and that will allow us to get into the button and adapt it, and then basically we're going to close it all back up by sewing it back up. So on this Mickey Mouse, there is a button here in his hand. So I'm going to look for a seam, and the seam is basically just two pieces of fabric come together and they're stitched together. So if we can cut open that seam, we could get in there, and then we can sew it back up when we're done, and it doesn't look all that bad. So to do that, we're going to use a seam splitter. We're going to try to get right in between the two pieces of fabric with this little point. And we're really only trying to cut the seam itself. We're trying not to cut the actual fabric. So once I've got that in there and it's between the two pieces, I'm just going to kind of run it down this seam. So once you've got your seam opened up, the button is here in his finger, but I really just need access to the wires. I don't actually need the button. So I'm just gonna kind of get in here, and I'm gonna try to locate where those wires are. You can see they're right down in here. Okay, so there are the wires, and all I'm gonna use is some snips or some wire strippers, and I'm gonna try to cut that wire as close to the button as possible. That will give us the most room here to operate on. So we've got our two wires here. Now we just need to separate the casing. You can either use some wire strippers, or sometimes you can even just use your fingernail and just pull it off like that. Now these wires are just a bunch of little wires in a casing. So we need to combine all these together. So I'm just gonna twist the ends together. So I've got my two wires here in my Mickey Mouse, and I've stripped the casings back. Now all I need to do is attach my headphone jack wire to it. So there's two wires to the headphone jack. One wire is going to go here and one wire is going to go here. It doesn't matter which. And we're going to solder them together and heat shrink them, make sure those connections are solid and not going to touch. And then all we got to do is stuff it all back together. So you'll stuff everything back in and then stitch it up. Now, I am not a good sewer. I have no idea how to do it. I basically just tie a knot down here, and then with a needle and thread, just kind of sew it up the best I know how. It doesn't necessarily need to look too pretty. As long as it's closed up, we're okay. Another good thing to do is to put a zip tie around your headphone jack wire, and that will go inside the toy. What that will do is just add a little bit of a physical barrier from somebody being able to just yank the cord straight out of the toy. So attach a zip tie around the headphone jack wire, cinch it down real good, and just make sure your stitching around that area is just really tight. That will just, again, prevent anyone from yanking the headphone jack wire out of the toy.